Hello, everyone. Hi, this is Henry DeVries, and this is our Q&A, our monthly Q&A for Marketing with a Book and a Speech. We have a very special guest today. She's going to talk to us for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to have an open mic Q&A. Any question you want about planning a book, writing a book, publishing a book, promoting a book, and we've got a great resource in Chris Slocumb. She is the author of Stop Starvation Marketing. We had a pleasure of helping her create that book, and she's going to tell you about her journey. And then also we have Devin DeVries with us, our VP of Production and Promotion here at Indie Books International. So any of those nitty-gritty questions. So thanks everybody for joining. Devin, why don't you pin Chris and let's have a chat. Hey, Chris, good to see you. Why don't you introduce yourself and talk about the journey on Stop Starvation Marketing, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, Henry. I'm Chris Slocumb. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Supreme Optimization and President of Clarity Quest, which was my agency that got acquired by Supreme just this year. So I've had quite a journey in getting my company acquired and writing the book. And now I'm like, I have all this time. I'm like, where did that come from? Which is wonderful. So thank you for having me today.
Thanks. Well, Chris, it was a year ago this month, you heard me on Drew McClellan's AMI broadcast, and we had some conversations back and forth and said we could create this book in a year. I flew out to Providence and we met and we planned it out. And then our process was first, we did a sloppy first copy, and then chapter by chapter, we tackled this and then went through publishing and now in promotion. And like every great work, there were plenty of bumps in the road along the way. We like to talk about roadblocks. These weren't roadblocks. They were more like potholes we had to get through. So we've got, and in the publishing process, there are all these third parties that control things, and they bring potholes to it, and you got to get past them. It's like the great truism about perseverance overall. Also, you shared with me in our dinner last month that you just didn't sell that agency out of the blue. That was a perseverance journey too. So if we get a question on that, I'm sure you'll field it. So, Chris, why don't you give an overview of the book?
Absolutely. So my book is aimed at a niche audience. So Stop Starvation Marketing is 23 power moves for digital health and life sciences companies, because that is the niche that our agencies sell into. So for a very specific audience, which Drew McClellan and Henry both advise you do. And so it is not for every person out there. In fact, my mom is reading it and she's like, I don't get some of this stuff. And I'm like, that's good, because you were not the audience for this book. But so it's pretty funny. Within the audience that we're trying to reach, it's resonating extremely well. And the Indie Books team was just fabulous in working with me. I had chapters in Google Drive folders everywhere. And I found what was really great about working with Henry and Devin and the team was they could encapsulate what I should be doing and give me a roadmap. I'm a task person, right? So if you give me a task and give me a deadline, then I'm going to get it done. But before, when I didn't have Indie, it was just like, oh my gosh, it seems overwhelming. So I equate it to like training for a race. I'm running a 5K on Sunday. And I was like, you don't just start and like go out there and run unless you're, 15 years old. But, but, you have a process you follow and training that you follow. It was the same thing in writing a book. Training, having a coach, having deadlines, and meeting those deadlines.
You're not the typical agency owner author either, and that you have 8 US patents and you have a master's degree in engineering and an MBA, and you bring all that to the dance. So thanks for the kind words. There's also something in your book beyond the niche, is what we call the proprietary problem-solving process. and you named it, you defined the process, and if I understood right, that intellectual property was appealing to the company that you merged with. So tell us about the Tower of Power.
Absolutely. Well, I have to give credit where credit's due. Henry, you helped me come up with that. But in our very first meeting, you sat down and you said you have to have a proprietary named methodology. And so I kind of described what we were doing, and that Tower of Power really applies to any company that's looking at doing successful marketing. In starting with a very solid foundation of messaging and branding and marketing strategy and KPIs, key performance indicators, and building all your marketing on top of that, whether it's public relations or SEO or lead generation. A lot of companies jump right to the top of the tower, get us leads, get the phone to ring, and they don't do all the work for the foundation. So that Tower of Power is a success methodology that's worked time after time. And Henry helped me name it. We had been doing it for 23 years. And the stories in the book are 23 different companies that use that methodology to get acquired, to really grow by 6, 7x. So it is a proven methodology.
So Chris brings up something interesting in the choice of book. So we could have gone with like a 10-chapter book that started why this is important and how to do it. And then part 2 could have been the Tower of Power, and we broke it out. And then we'd have a part 3 about how to build a culture around it and how to sustain the effort. Or we could go with what we called the 20 essay book. And Chris had these great stories. She had these great sayings. She writes for Forbes Agency Council, and she's a storyteller in her own right. So we went with that strategy. It turned out to be 23. That's 23 power moves. So, you can have secrets, ways, lessons. We went with power moves because, hey, that Tower of Power thing, and it rhymes. So we're tying it all together. I have a New Yorker cartoon that hangs in my office, and it's a couple at the breakfast table, and the wife's reading the newspaper, and she goes, "Honey, they've just discovered another business that's just like show business." So from that Broadway play, Annie, Get Your Gun, there's no business like show business. Well, actually there is. It's the book publishing business. We're in a bit of the show business. We need to capture attention and tell stories and bring people along. The third option for a book is one we didn't even consider, but that is the fable, the business fiction, the business novella, like Who Moved My Cheese, or The 1 Minute Manager, or The Go-Giver by Bob Berg, or The Richest Man in Babylon, or The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. You tell a story. Ken Blanchard uses this all the time. You tell a story to illustrate a few key points. We went deeper with that, but those are your options basically for a business book, and this is what Chris chose. So
Henry, can I expound on one really great thing about the one we chose?
Yes, please.
Of having these like 20 different stories. So we have 20 different companies' stories in there and 20 different named people, which was a kind of a pain when I was like to get permissions to use all of that. But now that the book is published, guess what? I send each one of those a copy of the book, and every single one of those thought leaders or CEOs is putting up a LinkedIn post about it and sharing the news. So it's not just me putting out, hey, read my book. It's everyone named in the book saying, read this book.
So Gretchen Rubin, The Happiness Project, I wrote about her book, and I thanked her so much for helping me. And she goes, "Henry, you're shining a spotlight on my book." I said, "I'm stealing that." So Chris, you can steal it from me. You can thank all those people for shining a spotlight on your book. And that is the power. It was a pain, under the First Amendment, you'd say Chris didn't have to get permission to write positive things about these people, but pragmatically, you want them on your side. Also, you want to know, if you ask somebody and the hassle meter goes off, where they say, well, we're going to have to run it by legal, and then we're going to have to do this. Then you can go, oh, well, never mind. We have another story, and you can move on if that's the case. We had one author, his story was disguised. He changed men to women and state location and everything, but just ran it by the client. And the client went ballistic because there was somebody who was disguised, but who got credit. And that person thought that person should never get any credit for the project. They had a falling out. We go like, yeah, let's just take it out of the book. We don't want to, you don't have to have it. So there we go. Well, now I'd like to open it up, and Devin, maybe we go to the Brady Bunch format, or you decide. You're the producer. But for me to, yeah, it's easier for me if somebody raises their hand, either with the little device at the bottom or just the old-fashioned way, physically raising your hand. So Dr. Steve Swavely would love to get a question from you.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. And by the way, I'm the author of Ignite Your Leadership, another book that was published by Henry. Thank you so much for your help there, Henry.
You're welcome.
Chris, my question for you is the proprietary process that you put together, did you protect it in any way legally? And if you did, talk a little bit about what that involved.
Yes, thanks for the question. So it actually came up during my acquisition process because the private equity company wanted to make sure that so we put in something in the book that says it's a pending trademark of both agencies that are involved now. And that covers us, first right, first coverage in there. And then if we want to get a trademark on it first, we can show that, we put it in here and had pending trademark. So that is in the works right now.
Okay. Are you actively pursuing that trademark, or is it just kind of at this point it's still listed as a pending trademark?
It's listed in the book as pending, but we are pursuing it.
Okay.
So
right. Thank
Steve,
you.
I have to go with the following disclaimer. The following is not legal advice. I am not an attorney, and I do not give legal advice. Please consult professionals for any decision you make. This is for educational purposes only. We hire trademark attorneys to do that work. It costs somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 to get a Circle R. The process takes 6 months to a year, and then you have the trademark for 5 or 6 years, and then you have to renew the trademark. Yes, you could try to do it yourself, but what did Abraham Lincoln say about having yourself as a client? That's a foolish thing to do. I paraphrase. So anyway, we don't make any money. We're happy to refer people in. Matter of fact, it's part of the ethics of the legal firm that they don't pay commissions or referral fees or something like that.
I would recommend there's a USPTO search you can do. Again, not legal advice, but just if you're curious and looking at a name for your methodology, you can do a cursory search. And we did that just to make sure no one else had Tower of Power or Marketing Tower of Power, to make sure it was clean.
That website is uspto.gov, and you're looking for the TESS database, and it's a simple tool. And that was not legal advice. It was educational advice.
Research.
And Henry, if I heard you correctly, and Chris, thank you for that little piece. If you did your own cursory search and you go, wow, I think I have something here, then it's roughly $1,000 to get the copyright or the whatever the trademark symbol is, right?
Probably $1,500 with fees.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So Indie Books International is a Circle R. We registered that because everything I own is for sale. My watch, my house, my business, if somebody came along, and I would need that proper protection. Now,
Gotcha.
my trademark attorney said, Henry, this will neither be a good sword nor shield if somebody really large with lots of lawyers come after you. I said, I understand. I'm just trying to scare off the people who do that quick test database search and go, oh, that's already taken, and move on. one of our authors, their website, somebody offered them $45,000. It didn't start with that. It started at 5, and they kept saying no till it got to 45,000 for their domain name. And at 45,000, they thought, I could get a new domain name. And they did. So you have to be thoughtful on all these things. They are intellectual property, website names, process names, and the like. Roseanne Forte, good to see you, Roseanne, from the great state of Arizona. What's your question? And you're on mute right now.
I'm listening now. Sorry, that wasn't a hand raise.
Oh, it wasn't a hand raise. You know, I found yesterday when I made a gesture, it raised my hand. I don't know. It's getting super sensitive. Do we have another question from the audience here?
Hi guys, it's Jamie. I'm driving, so I got my camera off.
Oh, okay.
Chris,
Hi, Jamie.
Chris, hello. Chris, you have to tell Henry that good news about the email you just sent us, a podcast. That's so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I met Jamie through the whole indie family here. And so her organization is sending out my books and gifts to all those lovely people who allowed me to use their name, and also to media folks. So there's about a marketing book podcast, has about 11 million listeners a month, and sent him one of the books along with one of Jamie's lovely notes, which if you've never seen them, they have like the most amazing handwriting. I have one right here. I don't know if I can show you, but it probably won't show up here. It won't show up here on my thing, but it is beautiful. And I have the worst handwriting in the world. It was like the only class I ever got a C in was in grammar. My mom would be like, how can you like fail penmanship? Right. And she was, so I have Jamie and the Expressory group handling all that and making me look wonderful. And I got invited to that podcast primarily because the guy made me a video and was like, this is the most gorgeous handwriting and note I've ever seen in my life. And so thank you, Jamie and Carrie and the folks at Expressory.
Yeah, the one girl, well, both of them, their handwriting is like immaculate. It looks like it came out of a machine. It blows my mind. But you know, for them, it's like an art form. But I love that story. I'm going to have to come back to you on that. But I think you also answered my question because I was going to ask about your list. And so each one of those featured stories, they would receive a copy of the book. And they'd probably be first on your list. I want to imagine.
Absolutely. Yes, they are first on the list along with a wonderful box of chocolates. So you want to make sure and then I asked them, would you please do an Amazon review after they say thank you for the lovely chocolates? So it's a process, right? And making sure that you show gratitude to folks.
So
very cool.
We're sending out 30 copies of the book. The first 7 launched, and Vicky's writing the notes for me because my wife Vicky has beautiful handwriting. And I once, back in the day when I had a secretary, the secretary said to me, I think it's so cute that all the notes you write to people, you make it look like a 5-year-old was writing it. That's very creative. I said, thank you. So we'll have a contest for bad penmanship, Chris. The index is important. So Chris has an index. We also have endnotes, but we have an index because people will go back and look for their names, so that they can go to the index and there they see Alan Roga. That's me. Dale Carnegie taught us the name is the most important thing to somebody. So it's nice that we shine a spotlight on them. So an index is building marketing into your book. And we do simple indexes. I of course have written academic books, and we would have 8 pages of the index and we would have 200 to 300 endnotes. don't do that with your business book. You don't need to do that, but you need some end notes. So you prove to people you just didn't pull this out of the air or out of your rear end. And then a simple index where you're doing proper nouns, proper names, proper company names. If you're quoting Mother Teresa or Einstein, throw them in there too. So that's important. Okay. Any other questions for our experts here? Dr. Steve.
Yeah, I don't want to shift the conversation away from Chris. Fascinating story, Chris. Thank you for sharing. But I do have a question for you, Henry.
Okay.
If it's okay.
Oh, no, that's it. It's open forum. If it's on your mind, we want to talk about it.
Well, you mentioned, well, first let me say, when I was writing my book, you said to me, well, Steve, this will be one of many books you write. And I thought, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm at the point where I'm thinking about book number 2. And one of the things that's very intriguing to me is the concept of the business fiction book. And I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about how do you approach that as an author that's never written that type of book?
Yeah. Well, one, you do it in partnership with a developmental editor. And so when I'm doing it, I'm looking for the main message that you want to get across or some main points. And then a typical story like this has 6 beats. One, we meet our main character before, and we make them likable. We did one about a salesperson, and it was a likable salesperson. And then beat 2 in the story is something happens. This person got a new boss, didn't like him, put him on a performance improvement plan, a PIP if you've been in the corporate world. So he's got 90 days to turn this around. The title of the book was Reinventing Ralph, because Ralph was this salesperson, and Ralph was really mired. He was likable, but mired in old ways of doing things. Beat 3 in a story like that is enter the mentor character, which is often you in disguise. So the mentor character comes in to the story and has that tough conversation with, well, you can do it, but you're going to have to change, no change message. And the main character always gives pushback. Well, I don't know if I can do that. And the mentor character says, yes, you can. And I'm here to help. But, I'm a taskmaster. I have rules. And then beat 4 is the pursuit. It's like that middle part of the movie where the main character keeps overcoming roadblocks. She runs into this problem and does this. She runs into that problem, does that. It's the most interesting part of the movie, by the way. It's usually the first half hour of a movie is those 3 beats I was telling you about. It sets it up. The next hour of the movie is this pursuit piece where they're going after the goal and the stakes get raised and more complications come in. Very interesting. And then the 5th beat is toward the end of the movie, and toward the end of this book and story is they cross the visible finish line that was declared back with that conversation with the mentor. I tell a story about a person who said, I'm gonna make $200,000 a year as a speaker and a consultant. And that's the Penny Reed story. It starts Penny Reed is at a kitchen table with a stack of unpaid bills, no job, no clients. And she declares that in 2 years, I'm going to make $200,000 a year. The 5th beat is I fast forward when I tell it in 2 minutes to 2 years later, she prints out her profit and loss statement. And under gross profit, it says $200,000, $100,000 from speaking and $100,000 from consulting. So that's the mental picture we all got. Oh, Penny Reed did it. She crossed the finish line. Then there's always a 6th beat. There's one more about the world after. So what is the world after? So in Reinventing Ralph, he's also repaired a lot of his personal relationships that had suffered because of the old way of doing things. in the Penny Reed story, I get to say, oh, because I'm not telling the whole story, but in the Penny Reed story, it starts off that she's at this kitchen table in a small little 800 square foot apartment, which was a far cry from the 4,000 square foot home she used to live in with her ex-husband, who owned the company and was her employer and who gave her all her client work. So now, no home, no employer, no client work. My after story is telling that Penny Reed gave me permission to tell you this story on two conditions. One is I'm not to make her ex-husband the villain of the story. He was not. They just didn't want to be married. And two, she's now up to $280,000 a year. So that's an afterworld. There's sometimes there's another story I tell and about this marketing director and all this, and and at the end of the story, I ran into a problem, and that marketing director showed up to save me. It's sort of that I saved her, and then later I needed help, and she showed up right away to save me. So if you watch a movie like Lord of the Rings, a lot of people have, so that's why I'm referencing it. But Lord of the Rings, they throw the ring in the volcano and evil's destroyed and all that. Well, the movie doesn't end there. We need to see how the world is a better place. So, the elves go off, the other characters go off, somebody gets made king. The people, the hobbits go back to the Shire and have second breakfast. So whatever, it's you see that world. So
Yeah.
That's how I work with people in those stories. Ken Blanchard rarely does a book without that formula. Mm-hmm. Just because he knows, and from his work with others in the field, that human brains are so hardwired for stories. Just telling a story like that in 12,000 words, it's probably going to be more powerful than a 50,000 word book with all your textbook knowledge and all that, and just a few stories to illustrate it.
Yeah.
So
Great.
Coming around, the mid ground was what we did with Chris, that each chapter is a story. So it's pulling in a story. I did the same thing with my Warren Buffett book. Every chapter starts with a compelling story and then just comes out with what the lesson is.
Okay.
Great question.
Nice. I love that model. That was one of the things I found really helpful when you helped me do this, was the format. You gave me a format that helped, I don't know the right word, really, well, it gave it structure. And I love that idea. So we'll talk more about it.
Format is our friend.
Yeah.
It frees you. Roseanne, is your hand really up this time? Okay. Your question, please.
I made it more obvious.
Okay.
This question is for Chris or Henry or anybody on here who has successfully accomplished this. So I published my first book before I knew Henry. I'm publishing my second with Henry. And but in between first and second, I created a course that really goes well with the book. And I'm trying to figure out, I'm like selling these books and I'm doing a pretty good job of selling the books, but how do I let the book purchaser know about the course? Because I'm not always getting the email. Right now I have, join the private Facebook group and stuff like that. So I'm grabbing a smaller percentage than I'd like to of emails and Facebook people through book sales. And I just want to, kind of leverage the book, because the book is something I'm selling at a pretty good clip. So
I can field it, and if anybody wants to jump in. So the first thing is, and you've heard me say this before, your role model is Pamela Slim, and reverse engineer and study the PamelaSlim.com website.
okay. I met her, remember?
I do remember.
She lives right down the street from me. Yeah.
and she's a wonderful person. She's also a role model for all of us, as she's a multiple best-selling author, and she's had to figure out this dilemma, because when you sell all those books out there, we don't get the contact information. Now, something that Michael Gerber, best-selling author of the E-Myth, did is at the end of the book, there's like a resource page, and it's short and sweet, that says, and it's offering something like a free consultation or a free group consultation. So I read the E-Myth, I called them up and got a hold of them, and they said, "Oh yeah, great, glad you're doing this. We have these two." They were like Q&As, like we're doing now. We do these. There's 2 Q&As we do for authors. Let's slot you in. So I go in, and after the 2, they said, "Oh, if you want more help, we offer 2 options. One is you can meet one-on-one with a facilitator every month. It's $800. Or you could be in a group with 12 other business owners. It's $300 a month. You get all the materials and the training." So they didn't have it all as online. This was 15 years ago. So we weren't even on Zoom. We were on teleconference calls, where we all called into this number, 800 number. But that was the great model, is you have to put something in the book to find the people. Pamela sends you to her website for all kinds of resources. And to get the resource, it's pretty easy. You give your name and your email, and you're told that you can opt out of her list anytime you want. But you're happy to get these free resources, but then you're offered her training. So one of her trainings is, let's say you're really good at what you are, Pamela, really good. I'm sorry, Roseanne. Roseanne, you're really good at what you do. And there probably could be other people who you train and certify to give the training. That's one model. And she teaches that model, and for a price you can get in. We also have one of our faculty who's published a couple of books with us and is in the digital space, and creates a whole program that's all online for that. And to get a no-cost consult with her, you just come through me, and her name is Dr. Teresa Ashby, and it's Kaleidoscope Media, and she'd be happy to talk to you about that. And then I recorded her, and she has a book that's out, and the book would be helpful. So we could, in our private chats, we could go down that thing. Did Devin or Chris, did you have anything to add to that?
I took a really quick look at Pamela's. I think her website is fantastic. Ann Handley, Handley, a writing coach, has a fabulous website, blog, newsletter, where she gets people to sign up through there. I'd have it all over your Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And making sure you're putting out like one social post every week on a particular topic related to your coaching.
I'm doing some writing now on what I call the V6 lead engine. Lead machine. So there's 6 things you do, and each thing is designed to capture opt-in emails, and then you invite people back to it. So I'll be publishing that soon. But the basic idea is, 1, you do Q&As like this, and you get people to sign up and build a community. 2, your deeper trainings that people pay for have a few scholarship seats. It's not easy to say, scholarship seats. And you are choosy, but you choose some people to comp into the scholarship seats to help bring them along. As Chris mentioned, free content. We do, both Chris and I do a lot of like LinkedIn newsletters and articles, and we support it with social media. You can have something on the website where if people want to get your article, they can leave their email. So it's all to build up this list. Jamie Shibley, drop off. You want to get on her list. because she does Q&As like this. Some other people do Q&As, and Steve demoed it. He did the perfect demo for everybody when he started. He introduced himself, casually threw up the title of his book, then asked a good question, and you got to meet him. And then, there's other things. He got to meet you too. I didn't mention it. I was remiss, but I encourage everybody in the chat to put in your contact information and maybe visit each other on LinkedIn. And because for recommending each other as speakers, we can't do that unless we've heard people speak. I think if you ask questions on this call, I count that as a speaking engagement for you. And people heard you in action and could recommend you. So all those things going on. So we don't do, I don't want you to be salesy and promotional because it works against you, not because it works, I'm trying to stop you. It's like, don't do that. It's the worst thing. It drives people away. So just be generously helpful with everybody you can. And it's amazing how lucky you're going to get in this life. Okay. Any other questions? Jim, from the great state of California, I believe.
That's right. Sacramento area. Good morning here. Good afternoon elsewhere, maybe. Just a quick tip that's helped some people. Sometimes people publish a book through a publisher and they have 3,000 copies of their book. So Henry gave great advice on adding an irresistible offer, some way of getting people's names and emails, and then following up with autoresponders or newsletters or your educational offer. So Roseanne, I don't know if you can modify your books or not, but I've advised if you can't, if you have a bunch of copies of your book, then have a metallic sticker with the offer, put it in the back of the book or the front of the book, wherever is appropriate. And that's a way of getting around that obstacle.
Yeah, the way I have it now is I can modify it. So.
Okay, great.
Great. That's the beauty of print on demand publishing, of course, is we can always just take it down for a day, put that in, and put it back up. So any other questions for the good of the order? Yes, Amy.
I've got a question. Hi, I'm calling from San Antonio. I'm a music therapist, thinking about writing a book about how to use music and humor for caregivers and there are people living with dementia. And my question was, I find it hard to write story. I feel like when I tell a friend a story, I always get a laugh. It's very natural. When I go to write it, I write too many details. I'm just curious what resources there might be for people to recommend for me to become a better story writer.
Well, I could recommend my favorite American author on the subject. That would be me. So I have a book called Persuade with a Story. So I have a website that you can go to, persuadewithastory.com. Lots of free information, videos, and how to. Amy, just send me an email and I'll send you a free PDF copy of the book.
Oh, wonderful.
It basically tells you that, and I've been paid to travel the country teaching CEOs and the C-suite how to tell these stories so that they can get more investors, better job candidates, media coverage. So the basic formula, real quick, is a story has 3 characters. The stories you tell, you are not the main character in the story. I'll let you tell one of those. That's your origin story. But for the most part, you're telling stories about people you've helped go from mess to success. So a caregiver that was in a bad spot, and then there's always a nemesis problem. Doesn't have to be a person, but I would say dementia is the nemesis character in your stories. We hate it so much. And then you're the mentor character because you gave the advice, the wisdom and experience that the main character chose to follow to succeed. One of my authors said, "Oh, I got a story for you. This person comes in, I give them this great advice, they don't take it, and they go bankrupt." I said, "Yeah, that's called a cautionary tale, and don't tell those. They are not appealing. People want to know if people did follow your advice, what happened and what went there." So Also, I teach that there are 8 basic stories humans are hardwired for. One producer in Hollywood told me we only make 8 movies in Hollywood. They're these basic stories. So when you know if you're telling a monster problem story versus a redemption comeback story, you're able to put that into the story and tell it in a way that our brains are already programmed to receive. And psychologists like Carl Jung said that it's not that we want these stories, we need to hear these stories to keep going. We need a great rebirth story to keep us plugging along. So that's what I would encourage you on that, to go on deeper learning.
Henry, I have an idea for Amy as well. You started your question by saying, I'm really comfortable talking to friends. There's some people that are just much more verbally comfortable. There are lots of tools. We could be on this Zoom right now. You could be on a Zoom with a friend, and there's a free tool that's attached to Zoom called Fathom Note Taker. It will transcribe your whole story, and it even has AI attached to it right now, and it will write the story. You can say, please take what I spoke to my friend about and turn this into a story. You don't want to use that verbatim, but it could at least get you going and over the hump of, being stuck.
Great. Thanks, Chris. I see Jean Wright has her hand up.
Hi, I'm the author of Selling Your Confidence, and I'm glad to be here finally. I've been traveling a lot, so glad to be able to join you all. I wanted to ask Chris a question about how she came up with the title for her book. I'm not sure I'm familiar with the niche of the businesses that you're targeting. If you might want to mention that again, and then maybe why you named the book the title you gave it.
Yeah, so Stop Starvation Marketing is kind of a different kind of title, but it came from my 23 years of working with technology companies, specifically health tech and life sciences, where they put marketing below everything else in what they budget for. Right. And so I call them, they're on a starvation marketing diet. Right. And we're seeing it even today. I just shared a cartoon with Henry yesterday, and it was all over LinkedIn yesterday showing, hey, this is the lever you pull when revenue starts to go down. They said, what's that? It cuts your marketing budget. Right? It's the first thing that gets cut. It's the first people that are usually laid off. And it's dumb. Right? Because 80% of the customer journey is completed before they talk to a salesperson. Right? So if you're cutting your marketing, you're cutting your revenue pipeline. And that's what I found a lot of tech companies. I worked for Motorola when Motorola was cool and awesome and made lots of money. And where are they now? Way, way, way behind Apple and Samsung and lots of other companies in the phone business. And that's because they ignored their marketing and starved their marketing. And so that's how I came up with the title.
As someone in sales, I totally understand the feeling you get when that company tells you, sorry, we're cutting our marketing, or, and you go through a lot of hoops, and then you find out that that's changed. And I get that totally. So thanks for explaining that.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. I've been there when they had to get their fourth quarter numbers in. So, you're doing fantastic. We're cutting your budget until January. It's like, okay.
I don't know. I might challenge that marketing's the first to go. Leadership training is also high on the list to get bumped.
Yeah.
But I love, now that you explain that title, I love that title, and it really speaks volumes to your approach. I love that. Thanks, Chris, for that explanation.
See, we're getting in the home stretch here. Any other questions for the three of us? Hearing none, I'm going to let everybody have the rest of their day back. Thanks for joining us. Chris, thanks so much. Well, not only for joining us today, but for everything.
Thank you.
You're an ideal author. And thanks, everybody. And look forward to talking to all of you soon. We're going to have another one of these. Devin, when is our next one?
December 7th.
Did we have a title for that?
how to find right fit clients.
How to find right fit clients. Finding those clients from hell is easy. We want to be able to find the right fit clients. So we'll be talking about that next month. Hope you join the community. Thanks, everybody. And until next time, keep writing. Can't spell authority without the word author.